Hello friends and welcome to NoClip2's latest big preview, this one on The Legend of California.
In the past, we've produced big previews for indie games like Mutagenics and Demon School. So why today are we covering a big new game from an industry veteran?
Well, perhaps it's because this big idea is coming from a personal place and is being made by a remarkably small team.
When Jeff Kaplan left Blizzard after a storied 19-year career working on World of Warcraft, Titan, and eventually leading the team on Overwatch, he could have done pretty much anything. He could have joined another studio in the Los Angeles area. He could have asked venture capital for $200 million for a game as service idea. He could have retired and tended to his garden. Instead, Jeff built a team comprised of some of his old friends and some new faces to help him with a passion project. Something inspired by both his favorite online game and the place for most of his life he's called home. For the past few years, Jeff and a team of around 33 people have been working on The Legend of California, and for the past month or so I've been playing different in-development builds of it, exploring its large world, hunting its animals, murdering its outlaws, riding my donkey, feeding my donkey, killing my donkey, mining, fishing, chopping down trees, being mauled by wolves, being mauled by bobcats, starting a homestead, doing jobs for money, taking wagon rides, cooking, placing candles, reviving a beloved video game rental store, being harassed by large sheep, and torn apart by bears. Today I'm going to tell you why I've played over 40 hours of this game and still can't put it down. How the game is structured, how each version of its world is procedurally created, the way combat and PvP works, and much more. I also made the real-life journey from Northern California to Southern California to talk to several members of the team at Kintsugiyama, and also to practice pronouncing the studio's name. We chatted about its gameplay, open world, and their hopes for this game once players get in and start running amok. And I talked to Jeff about his experience at Blizzard, what it was like leaving, and how this new project came about.
This is the big preview for The Legend of California. As ever, if there's a specific section you're really interested in hearing about, we do provide chapters in every one of our videos. And if you're new to NoClip2, then we invite you to subscribe.
The NoClip documentary channel focuses on work about how games are made, but our mission here on NoClip2 is to showcase great upcoming or newly released games from interesting teams. Not how these games are made, but how they play and why you should play them. And not just industry veterans, but developers on the fringes too. We think we're building something unique here and would love to have you along for the ride. Last note, I played multiple development builds of the game to get an idea of how far along it's come over the past 6 months. So some of the gameplay will look not as clean as some of the stuff I recorded on the latest version of the game. And of course, this is all in development gameplay, so much of this has yet to be optimized.
Alright, enough housekeeping. Let's dive in.
My name is Jeffrey Kaplan. I work at Kintsugiyama, a studio I founded with my good friend Tim Ford.
My name is Tim Ford. I'm one of the studio heads at Kintsugiyama, where I oversee most of the engineering department.
The company was formed to make a passion project of ours called The Legend of California. It's a game that people are going to call it a survival game, which is fine. It has a lot of survival elements to it. I think of it as the California action game. We're rolling into alpha really soon. We're going to go into early access later on after an alpha and a beta. We're just kind of building our way there and looking for people to help start supporting us. For me, the inspiration and the passion for this particular project came from a number of places. One, I grew up in California, and I think it's an amazing place with the most diverse bioregions, flora, fauna, etc. So I always thought it would make a great game world. Two, I wanted to build sort of a survival sandbox game. I have always been a huge fan of the survival genre. In particular, I have one favorite game, which is Rust. I've played Rust for over 5,000 hours. The game that we're making is not like Rust in many ways. Rust is really like probably the pinnacle of PvP games. Anybody who's played a lot of Rust knows what I'm talking about. It's the ultimate month-long battle royale. And the last one comes from my background on World of Warcraft of just wanting to get back to working on a big open world multiplayer game and just what happens when people from all walks of life are playing in a space like this together. All of those things coming together are really what inspired this game.
Hello everyone, this is Jeff from the Overwatch team.
For most of my video game career was spent at Blizzard Entertainment. I joined in 2002, and I ultimately ended up leaving in April of 2021, so 19 years. I never imagined I would leave Blizzard. I always imagined that I would retire from there. Blizzard holds such a big part in my heart. I love the studio, I love the games. Some of my favorite game developers are still working there and making awesome stuff. I think I hit a point in my career where me and Blizzard had just grown apart in our view of, how we thought games should be made, what types of games should be made, how should the studio be structured. I didn't leave Blizzard because I wanted to start a studio. In fact, I just left Blizzard because I felt like I didn't really belong there anymore. And I planned to just take a break. My wife tried to convince me that I needed to take at least a year off, because I barely took off any time while I was in those 19 years. I really gave my all to Blizzard and to the games. And I would just sit in the backyard pulling weeds. She doesn't let me plant anything in the garden, but I am allowed to pull the weeds. And I was just sitting there wondering, am I just done making games? There's no real place for me. I couldn't imagine going to another company after having worked at Blizzard. Blizzard felt like the pinnacle, the top of the mountain, and I didn't have this desire to go work somewhere else. And I would take breaks and I would just start writing, just writing design docs. And then, that led its way into learning different software so I could maybe start making and prototyping stuff. Eventually I just had this really strong idea of this game that I wanted to make, which turned out to be Legend of California. And around that time, my good friend Tim reached out to me, and he had sort of reached a similar place in his career with Blizzard. That's when it really started to gain momentum, is when Tim left Blizzard. He was gonna take a month off, he was gonna take a break, and literally on his last day from Blizzard, after he had his exit interview, he calls me up and he's like, I'm coming over Monday afternoon. You better show me what we're working on, because if I take any time off, I'm just gonna be writing code anyway, and it might as well be for us.
I have worked on multiple teams where you do kind of new team, new IP, new tech. And that's every single project I've worked on that had those three failed. We got canceled, we fell apart, we pivoted. Titan falls into that camp. That was a pivot to Overwatch. This, I didn't know at the time, was not really gonna be new team for a lot of people on staff. We did wind up rejoining, even though our team is incredibly small, we did join with a bunch of folks who I've had the pleasure to work with for decades. So mark that one off the list. The risk had to kind of drop precipitously when we knew a lot of the folks we were working with. New tech, I chose Unreal fairly early on. Obviously, if you're making a first-person shooter and you don't want to be in engine development for 8 years, you should probably just get Unreal. So that was our tech thing. The last hurdle, obviously, is new IP. Well, we'll see. It's obviously for us, the intellectual property was something we're excited about, but I'm really confident that this thing's going to be a real banger.
I know there's a lot of startups who start a game company. We really want to be a company. Let's figure out what game we want to make. That path wasn't interesting to me. I had a very strong opinion of the type of game that I thought would be super fun, that I really wanted to work on. Tim was super on board with making that game. And I thought it was a better pact with the people who were gonna join us to know what they're gonna make. And I would openly say this to people in interviews. I would say, if this idea is not interesting to you, do us a favor and don't join. You need to be excited about this idea so we're all moving in a similar direction.
Kintsugiyama is a fully remote studio, born and forged in COVID, as Jeff puts it. The team is now a split between old Blizzard friends and new hires from around the US and Canada. The work that went into building this version of California is worthy of its own video, so we're working on a more development-focused video for the NoClip documentary channel that talks to more of the team about the research, technology and design that went into creating the island of California. but I wanted to touch on some of the fundamentals of the game world in this preview. Why California? Why an island? Is this a game set in a specific moment in time? And where is the line between survival craft video game and representing real history?
The island of California was sort of this idea of like, what if California was just off on its own and you were the first one, no one was here before you. You know, throw history out of the picture and you're showing up for the first time, and what would it be like? You know, the natural beauty and splendor, and also what if it was an island? The interesting part about that is, I think from about the early 1500s all the way through the 1700s, many actually believed that California was an island. Weirdly, our like crazy game concept does have some historical basis, but that's not where it came from for us. For us, it was, we wanted to do this really contained space. We wanted it to feel larger than life, like almost like a modern day myth or legend of, you know, there's an island out there with hills of gold in the storm and no one's ever gone there and come back to report it, but everybody wants to find it because the land itself is so valuable and rich and there's all these stories to be told. So that was sort of the basis for what this island is. So we iterated on the scale a lot. Initially, what we thought was going to be the right size turned out to be the wrong size. We have an amazing world builder, a guy named Will Harris. He would talk to us about, you know, how many players do we think we're going to have? What's the vibe of the game? And the vibe is supposed to be that it's like vast, expansive, lonely. So the smaller you make it, the more it feels like everybody's kind of up on top of each other. So Will would spend a lot of time, we would fake things. We would create what we thought was, for example, the size of a player ranch, and then we'd place 100, we'd place 200, we'd place 300, plus a bunch of enemy strongholds and outposts. And we would just run the world and say, does this feel right? And keep expanding from there. The other interesting part about making the island of California is not everything is equally interesting. So in real California, Central Valley, which is where all of the farming takes place, is one of the most dominant features of California landscape, but it's just a huge flat valley with nothing but farms in it. And for a game world, that's less interesting. So for example, the scale of our Yosemite is much, much larger than the relative scale of something like Central Valley. So we're trying to play the greatest hits. And it's been a really interesting push and pull experience.
How, you know, you've mentioned a lot about like the history of California, and obviously this is its own sort of take on it. How did you sort of like research and resolve the issue of sort of First Nations, right? Because like that's obviously a big part of Californian history that a lot of people would say is sort of like disappeared in many ways, even though we use names and place names and stuff for things that are obviously from tribes. Was there much research or thought about that put into that?
Well, the most challenging part about properly representing the First Nation experience in California is it's not limited to one tribe.
Right.
So you want to be really careful about making assumptions of like, is this okay or not? That's a very complex question. I think in present day, there are something like over 100 registered tribes. And historically, there's some number that's over 500 tribes have called this home. Our take on the island is we're not trying to specifically represent, you know, not only the First Nation or indigenous people that were here historically accurately as what happened. In the same way, we're not trying to represent the Spanish, Mexican, European, Chinese, Japanese experiences, because we know there's no way we can accurately capture that historically. So sort of the fiction of our land is that nobody was here. You can play as any of these characters. Like, you are free to define your character and their backstory, but we make no claims that like we're doing a good job of historical accuracy. In fact, we want to let people know we know that there is a great rich history, they should study it, but this is not the game to learn about history.
All right, maybe geography, perhaps.
Even geography, we do a pretty bad job with there is no North Coast, there is no East Coast. Yeah. We take a lot of liberties with our California.
Okay, let's dive into gameplay. The Legend of California is an online game, and each server is a new version of the island. Not in terms of the geography of the island, but rather the placement of encampments, enemies, and the different tiers of difficulty zones. Imagine, if you will, the world of Azeroth, but instead of Goldshire always being a low-level area and Stranglethorn Vale always being an area you'd need to level up a bit before you wander in, these difficulty tiers could swap around with every server seed. This is how the Legend of California works, the idea being that each server and each server reset provides a new version of the island with new challenges. The level 1 areas always appear on the coast, with level 2, 3 and 4 areas fanning outward from that point like the colours of a rainbow. Early areas have enemies with weaker weapons and fewer aggressive fauna, but the more you travel outward from that point, the more dangerous the world becomes, with enemies with better guns, more intimidating fauna, and larger, more intimidating enemy sites, which are known as encampments. These encampments range from small mines, to roadside camps, to medium-sized settlements, all the way up to large towns full of buildings that are best taken on as a group. Stores known as outposts are procedurally dotted around the island too, with roads procedurally connecting them and many of the large points of interest. We'll cover the technology and design behind these systems in our upcoming video on the NoClip documentary channel. Your character does have a level, but rather than based on some sort of XP system that you get from doing things around the world, you are guided by the game's challenge menu to complete specific tasks. Completing all of these tasks in one level unlocks the next one, and thus bonus features. For instance, to place your ranch, you'll have to be level 2. In my opinion, this works really well because it essentially operates as a tutorial for the various game systems, with an aim to getting you the knowledge and gear that you'll need to further explore. Better clothes, new weapons, ammunition, fishing rods, and ultimately blueprints to stake your own claim to homestead a ranch that you can place almost anywhere on the map, as long as somebody else hasn't already taken it. In terms of objectives, this is similar to most survival games in that you spend most of your time collecting resources to craft that better gear. But a large emphasis is put on traveling to meet this objective. The world is large and certain items can only be found in certain areas. Certain stores only sell the specific blueprints you might need, so you'll need to, say, roam around the world to uncover a mining store before you can build a mine on your claim. I've mentioned World of Warcraft already, and obviously this is a team of ex-Blizzard people, but I really need to emphasize just how often this game reminded me of playing vanilla WoW. That feeling of roaming into an area that was slightly too high level for you. The way fast travel is handled, you can basically soulstone back to your tent or ranch on a 30-minute cooldown, but most of the time you get around the map by taking wagon rides in real time. These rides are available between any store that you've already uncovered and also your ranch, allowing you to sit back and watch the world pass you by. Basically like taking the Deep Run tram or a griffin from Ironforge to Stormwind. Sorry Horde players, all of my WoW references are Alliance. And in case I haven't mentioned, this world is large, around the same size as the most recent Zelda games, so to take a wagon from the northeasternmost point to the southwesterlymost point is going to take you around 30 minutes. A lot of encampments in this game feel like running into mobs in Azeroth. Job boards give you daily objectives, which usually boil down to the Californian version of collecting ruined pelts. You can get a mount, you collect gold. The game is mostly PvE, but there are specific PvP zones. I mean, the comparisons go on. Later we'll talk about how death and PvP works, but first I want to focus on the biggest distinction between this game and a lot of other shooters: the lethality of the combat, the relative simplicity of engagements, and what it's like exploring a world like this in first person.
From the outset, we wanted to make a first-person shooter. Tim and myself just love first-person perspective in video games, but we have a designer named Jeff Goodman who is also like a first-person enthusiast, and he's so talented. He was the lead hero designer on Overwatch. It's beloved to us. I feel like it's the most immersive and expressive version of gameplay that you can have as first person. So there was never any doubt in our mind that the game was going to be first person. Now, from a shooting perspective, like a real nuts and bolts shooter, we were excited to explore a different type of shooter gameplay. If you really study Overwatch and think about it's like action, arcadey, people call it an arena shooter. And to me, what that means is like it was inspired by Quake and Team Fortress. It's got that larger than life, sort of vibe to it. Knowing that this game was going to be set in California in the 1800s, we wanted to embrace the weaponry of the time period because there's just so many cool guns and firing mechanics. Not only that, but it was a different type of game where you have these really long engagement distances. It's a big open world game where you might see something from 200 meters away. And we wanted to have those sort of long distance engagement distances, fast time to kill. Where a game like Overwatch, for example, it's got a very slow time to kill because you need to be able to heal and use your abilities. In this game, if you get hit by a bullet, you better like take some cover and use a bandage or something because you're going to get taken out. We also don't currently have any raycast weapons, meaning all of the weapons actually have, physical projectiles that are going out in the world, and they have bullet drop and velocity. And that's a really fun thing to learn for the different types of weaponry. Yeah, well, we have some very slow loading guns. So we have one gun that's called the Harrison muzzle loader that is, an old school black powder, pour it down, do the ramrod. I think the load time is something like 10 seconds, but it hits like a truck. And a lot of that is so that there's variety of the gameplay, and later on, you get into these guns that do, by the time you get a lever action rifle, you might have, 15 rounds in it, and you can fire them off, like in rapid succession. So that sort of gameplay is interesting to us.
Yeah, so the last game I worked on was Overwatch at Blizzard. So I worked on World of Warcraft for quite a while. As an encounter designer, I built encounters way back in the day from Onyxia and Blackwing Lair, Nefarian. I worked up until Cataclysm.
You're responsible for Onyxia.
Yeah.
You motherfucker.
That's right. A lot of us worked on Overwatch, and there's maybe this expectation of we're going to be in that space, but I kind of wanted to push really hard the other way because I knew we might have a tendency to slide towards the arcadey kind of style. We really did want this to be more grounded, more lethal, slower gameplay in that sense. The weapons feel really visceral and strong and powerful, and they don't fire very quickly. They have really slow rate of fire, really slow reloads. It's a very deliberate game. I think laying that down really early really helped set the tone of combat and how everything was going to work. And then, everyone's on board pretty much right away and kind of fell in love. This is before we even had AI, so we were just shooting each other in the early prototypes. So then we get to build up the AI side. But at that point, we already had an idea of the pacing and the tone of combat. So the AI, I think it felt a little easier to get in at that point. I mentioned earlier about being slower and deliberate and lethal. A lot of that's on the incoming damage side. And what we really wanted you to do is respect the cover and the level design, and not just be able to run out in the middle of the open and just kill everybody while they're shooting at you. If you take enough damage, you have to bandage, so you can't just that takes a little bit of time to heal yourself up, so you can't just immediately go back out. So there's just a lot more, especially in a group, if somebody goes out and gets shot, they run back, start bandaging, and you cover for them and everything. It's really, really fun dynamic, and it makes the levels especially really pop because you're really thinking all the time about how do we want to approach this POI? Do we want to go in from the side? There's actually cool routes underneath some of the points of interest we have that are really cool. So there's all these different ways to approach, and there's also different sizes of the encampments you can fight. And taking on a large is really hard because they can really hit you from all these angles, and there's just a lot of guys to kill by yourself. So it definitely helps to have a group in those cases, or just be really well geared.
Yeah, we want there to be a variety to gameplay styles. So there are no classes in this game. we want you to be defined by the gear you take out in that moment. We want to add those different, this is a very game designer thing to say, but like those gameplay verbs, so the player can start defining their play style. Maybe you're a stealthy bow player using tomahawks, where I just want the pump shotgun, and I'm going to choose the routes through the enemy encampments with the closest engagement distances, and just, go loud with the boomstick. So mining is central to the game. In fact, we want mining to be as fun as going out and shooting stuff. Plus, we built this like huge voxel, beautiful world, so it's a really fun technology and design to be playing with. At its core, there's sort of 3 types of mining that currently exist in the game. There are random enemy mines that just kind of show up. There might be a group of bandits out front, you clear them out, you get like a room with some resources to keep you going. Tiny little areas where you get to have like a little bit of that gold mine experience. The other type of mining there are really expansive mines in some of the points of interest. Not all of them. Not all of them have mines in them. Some of them are just like towns, like port towns. We have a shipyard, for example, like obviously doesn't have a mine in it. We've got this one large mining complex. We've got another mining town, and then we've got an abandoned mine. And we don't have it yet, but we're working on putting AI in those mines. So you're gonna have to like fight and mine at the same time. The last type of mining, which is like probably the most exciting, is we let you stake your own mine claim. And right now you do this on your ranch, and it is enormous. Like we give you, this is going to be hyperbole because with programmers there's always a limit to everything, but we basically give you all the voxels beneath your mine or beneath your ranch to just sort of mine out in this really cool way. And our mining system is put together with a lot of like very dynamic procedural, almost like dungeon building systems that create these really intricate levels. We give you elevators to get back up to the top. And it's really in its nascent form. Like when people see it in the alpha, it's not going to be our true vision of what it is. Especially the player ranch mine, it will get much better art treatment. Like our artists really haven't dug their teeth into it yet. It's very designer programmer right now, where we're trying to figure out the right mineral distribution and the right layouts of the mine. It's currently laid out almost like a wedding cake. If you were to see the layers, where the top layer is much smaller, and by the time you get to the bottom layer, it's huge and deep, and the rooms keep getting bigger and bigger and more grand. So we want to have hazards in the mine. We had this in at one point and we stripped it out, but we're going to be bringing it back, where you have to build the mining supports. You'll hear a rumble, you'll see the crumble of dirt, and you'll know it's going to cave in soon unless I do something. And then you have to timber the gold mine just like they did in the 1800s.
The island of California is often an intimidating place to explore. Wolves prowl the plains at night, large animals intimidate you, or attack on sight. Though I found you can often use this to your advantage. The AIs in this game are relatively simplistic, taking basic cover and moving slowly, and animals have patterns that can be learned. They do get smarter at higher levels, but in general they are not that taxing as long as there aren't too many of them. This seems like a reflection of the combat style of this game. Slower, more deliberate, where the focus is purely on lining up your shot and choosing the right moment to pull the trigger. Death happens often, and like World of Warcraft, it's relatively forgiving. Initially you respawn with the debuff a few hundred yards from your corpse, but you don't drop all your gear, only a few bucks, the game's currency used for buying certain items at stores. Bucks are earned by completing jobs and are character specific. But the game's other currency, gold, is shared among you and anybody in your company, sort of the de facto guilds of this world. The punishment for death is flipped on its head in the various designated PvP areas that each server assigns. Getting downed inside one of the PvP zones means dropping any of the loot that you picked up while in that area. Only visiting an outpost or leaving the PvP zone will clear the notoriety of this gear. But this freedom to fail is essential in a game with such fast time to die, where exploring the frontier is not only encouraged, but essential. With all of the hazards in this version of California, the most dangerous places you'll encounter are the enemy encampments. These are also all procedurally placed around the landscape on each game's server. And I'm not just talking about the small roadside ones, this also includes the largest towns in the game world. You may run into a massive factory town in the middle of the desert on one server and then stuck up a mountain on another. These come in a range of different sizes, and not all of them are best taken on solo.
These enemy encampments come in actually four sizes now that I think about it. There's ones we call micro, which are the hideouts, small, medium, and large. And a lot of this was inspired from WoW content, meaning in World of Warcraft, like you could do a lot of stuff solo. Like if you were playing solo, you could go off and do like a quest, and I can clear out the Fargo Deep mine if the quest tells me to and kill the kobold in there. But I can't do dead mines by myself. And I really can't go raid Molten Core by myself. And so we wanted different size enemy encampments, some of which, if you got brave or you got really great gear, you could go and do by yourself. But otherwise, you want to go in there with a group, and you kind of want to like do those things with other people. Initially, we were dropping all your stuff.
Right.
And in our earliest playtests, it just didn't fly with people. And it's very hard for me because I come from Rust. So I'm like...
It's an entire lawless game.
Yeah, like in Rust, it's like you get my ranch too. Like if I, God forbid, I left the door unlocked, like I'd have nothing. So
or someone's living under your floorboards and you don't even realize.
Yeah, that was such a great episode, Z-Chum. But I'm used to very hardcore, very punishing PvP. But I'm also excited, like this is the promise of user-generated content, server controls. I would love to be able to put in a server rule set that is like, yeah, you just drop everything, it's PvP everywhere, everybody can shoot everybody, and you can loot all their stuff. And if people are attracted to that kind of server, like, have fun, guys. You know, actually, I'll see you on that server. I'll be there with you, getting my stuff looted by you, probably. Let's say a player really doesn't like nighttime and they want to turn nighttime off. I don't care. Like, run your own server and turn nighttime off, or turn wolves off, or make everything 3 times as hard, or PvP all the time, and if you die once, you're off the server. I'm all for it. Us trying to figure out the rule set that fits everybody, I don't think is correct. And also, some people just like to run their own servers because they like inviting who they want to invite, or having the admin controls, or, you know, this is just our like one subreddit server, and you've got to, you know, have X amount of karma before you're allowed, whatever. We don't care. Just have fun playing the game. It's your game. One of the funnest parts about working on a dynamic open world game, like a truly dynamic open world game, especially the fact that it resets every month, is we can do crazy things like let players claim big portions of land. It's not easy, and we don't want it to be easy to move your ranch around. Like, we don't want it to be like an RV base where, you know, I've got this huge gold mine. Honestly, the hardest technical part is the mine, because you're mining all those voxels beneath you, and we can't guarantee the same thing being in the same place. But we also give you your own personal campsite where you can set up, and it's got, you know, just a few amenities, and we're very limited with fast travel in this game. We really are trying to like preserve that sense of place. But we do allow you to travel to the tent and the ranch, and we want you to be able to put that tent in different places. And it feels cool, like it's fun when you're running around and you see, like, I might see like, oh, there's Will's tent or Penny's tent. Like they're in the area. I wonder what they're up to. Part of the reason that we're running this upcoming alpha test is to really get a sense of how many players is right on a server. We have some ideas, we've tried some things. Our team is only 34 people, so when we run a play test, like the max we ever get to is 34 on the island, and we have a sense that feels good but slightly empty. We'd like to have more. What is the upper number? That's something we're actually going to use our alpha test to help determine. And then we'll have a beta a few months after this alpha test where we'll adjust from our learnings. So we're really trying to hone in on that right now.
This week, Kintsugiyama launched a closed alpha, and I got a few hours of playtime in there before I wrapped up this video. It's been fun seeing players helping each other in the text chat and dropping gratzes when people level up. Folks have been planting their tents close together, and I even had somebody give me an item blueprint a few minutes after I spawned in. How very arc raiders of them. The studio will be following up on this alpha with a beta and early access launch sometime in the future. From my time playing versions of the dev builds as far back as 6 months ago, I can already see how fast this game is progressing. But I wanted to ask Jeff what type of game players should expect in early access.
What are the areas of design that the team are mostly going to be focused on? And how do they all feel about people finally hitting the shores of the island of California?
There's a lot we want to do for early access. We need more end game. I think right now the game is fun for roughly, let's say, 25 hours. That's like 25 hours if you're a really experienced player and you know how to power through. A less experienced player probably is going to get more like 40 hours of what's currently there. I would like to have a lot more end game content. We have some really cool, rare items and rare creatures. I don't know if you saw any in your playtest, but for example, we have the white stag that you can kill, and when you get its trophy hide, you can craft this amazing spear. It's called the heart spear. There's a rare bison. There's the albino bear. Definitely not a polar bear, it's an albino bear. And when you get its hide, you can make a cloak out of it. So these like kind of rare end game hunt type items, we want to do a lot more of that type of gameplay. We also want to do more end game world events. We want to drive more to PvP. Alpha is going to have our first PvP events that draw players into the zones, but we need to evolve PvP more. We haven't really been able to do as much as we would like with PvP with a small 34-person team. Same with our customization systems. Like every piece of gear you can customize. You can also customize almost every piece of furniture. It's cool, like the tech is there, the promise is there, but the content is not set up correctly. And I think the mine needs, like the mine, we've come such a far way. It's cool right now, but it's very straightforward and kind of systemic, and we want that like infinite possibility. Like I just want to, I'm gonna log in for 2 hours tonight and I'm just gonna be in the mine, and we're not there yet. So that's kind of where I see things going.
I mean, it's always scary releasing a game to the public. I've done it a few times now, and that never gets any easier, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it's more exciting to me, I think, at this point, more than scary. Just because, it's hard to be heads down for so long, and you're making a lot of assumptions. We're inevitably going to miss something or didn't think about something or many things, and as players find them. So I get really excited about that because usually that just makes the game way better. These kind of shows are really cool because they can like really surge the game forward than we would have necessarily been able to figure out just in our, in our meetings.
The Legend of California is already a game I find myself going back to day after day, but that said, I've always been predisposed to PvE games that focus on roaming around large maps discovering things. On top of that, I myself live in California and have spent countless days camping, driving, and solo exploring most of the dozens of unique zones that are featured in this game world. Uncovering the various spots we've filmed no-clip documentaries at over the years has been particularly fun. But I also respect what the team are trying to do here. a studio around the same size as, say, Supergiant Games, who are focused on an experience that feels oddly throwback, stripped of narrative and bombast. No cutscenes or voice acting, just an ever-changing systemic sandbox for you to explore, where emergent interactions between players, the game world, and other online explorers is where the fun is had. Well, it's doing something right. 43 hours later, and I'm still here, chopping down trees.
We're not interested in representing ourselves as the ex-Blizzard devs. I'm very proud of having been a part of Blizzard, but I think it's diminishing to the people still at Blizzard. Like, Blizzard still is the king, sitting on top of the mountain making the greatest games. And I don't think this game idea, the IP, I don't think what we're doing at all, Blizzard would ever make. It's not in their DNA. It doesn't look and feel like a Blizzard game. And that's not what we're trying to do. Definitely not trying to draft off of Blizzard's success. They earned that. They spent 35 years defining who they are. And it would be silly of us to claim that, we have any right to that. I hope with this game, we create something that sparks the imagination and sort of attracts people to the fantasy of what would it be like to live in a world, explore a world, and interact with all of these, random gamers in fun and quirky ways, and also like the dynamic nature of it. I know in many ways we're building a new fan base here, and it's very scary for us. Like, we came from a background of, having that built-in sort of fan base that would follow you loyally and scream at you when you did it wrong. I'm really hoping we capture the support of the community, that they realize this is 34 people on a very limited budget, and we could use all the help we could get. We know the alpha is going to be small. We can't accommodate a lot. We're hoping to run like 2 servers, mostly because the game's not ready yet. Like, we're not ready to have this big statement out in the world. The beta will be a little bit bigger, and we'll try to get more people in it. And then in early access, we really need support. We need enough people to believe in the game that it makes it viable for us to keep making the game. The silver lining that's more for me and Tim is to try to prove to the industry that there's a different way of doing things, and there are different ways of being successful than the ways that have sort of been established and followed for recent years.